Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Eternal Spring. I'm Paul Thurrott, and I am here in Mexico City with my wife, Stephanie. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
So, despite the fact that our water situation is still not resolved yet, a friend of Stephanie's will be staying in our apartment later this month. And in discussing this trip with her, we ran into two common and interrelated misconceptions about Mexico that we thought we should address in a video. A little Mexico City myth busting, if you will.
Yes. The first one is about water. Everyone seems to know that you don't drink the water in Mexico City. And actually, that is true. You shouldn't drink the water that comes out of the taps here. The pipes here could be compromised or contaminated in so many ways. This is a really big city. It's just not a place that there's any guarantee that the water that comes out of your tap or comes out of any tap here is safe. You can't really trust it.
Right. I think what people don't understand is that no one can drink the water here, and that includes the locals. This is not something you can acclimate to. It's not because we're from the United States or we have weak stomachs or whatever. Literally, no one can drink the water.
Yeah, I think when we first came here, we had the same belief that, you had to be really careful with the water. And then you go to any little local abarrote or OXXO or little neighborhood store, and what you see is that they sell water in multiple size bottles. The biggest ones are 20-liter bottles, which are about 5 gallons of water, that are called garrafon. And they have just racks of these bottles inside the store, outside of the store. They have smaller bottles that are a little bit more manageable if you have to carry them yourself. And they're not just there for the tourists. They're there for the locals. They're there for everybody. Buying your water to drink is part of the culture here.
Yeah. I mean, I would say they're primarily here for the locals,
Yeah.
If we spent more time here than we can right now, we would get those garrafones delivered on some kind of a schedule. It's not expensive. And it's a lot easier than carrying these giant bottles of water. It's a little bit of exercise for me, and also it hurts my hands because the grips are kind of molded. But there's a place right up the street. It's only a block north of us, the place we go to. Abarrote La Flor, I think is the name of it. But I mean, within just a few blocks, there are several of these stores. I mean, everybody needs clean water.
Yeah. Yeah. So we buy bottled water. We use that for drinking. We use that for coffee. We buy bags of ice that are
We're so lazy.
Clean water.
Yeah.
And then we wash the dishes, we wash laundry with the regular water that just comes in through the taps. We obviously shower with regular water, brush our teeth with tap water. We don't buy a lot of produce, but when we do, or when locals do, you can buy a cleaner that you add to water, and you soak your fruits or vegetables in that cleaner, and that disinfects them, gets rid of any germs. And just like to the same point that this is what everybody does here, that fruit and vegetable cleaning product is sold in the supermarket right out there with all the other produce, because that's how people make sure that their food is sanitary.
Right. It's for locals. I mean, we benefit from it because we go to the supermarket, but it's for everybody. You also don't have to worry about getting water or ice, for that matter, anywhere in Mexico City, because it will never be unfiltered tap water, right? So any restaurant, any bar, any other place you might get a cup or a glass of water or whatever it might be, or a drink with ice, is safe. We spent a lot of time in the early trips asking every time, is this filtered, and you do not have to do that. It's bottled or it's filtered. The person that you're asking that question to couldn't drink it either if it wasn't bottled or filtered, right?
Yep.
So that's the water thing. That one's pretty definitive. But that brings us to Mexico City myth number 2.
Yes, which is street food.
Yeah, this one's going to be a little more controversial.
Yeah. I don't think with this one we can be as definitive as we can with the water. Right. I think with the water, you're pretty, you're going to drink water that is safe to drink in Mexico City. Street food is a little bit more nuanced. it's also so much, it's central to the whole experience of being in Mexico City. But we've talked to lots of people who are afraid of street food, have been told, don't ever eat any street food. And I mean, I think that's a shame because most street food, I think, is safe.
Right.
The issue here is that food might not always be handled as carefully as it is where we come from. You definitely see stores and markets where, there's a chicken store right around the corner here where there's just piles of chicken out. In other markets, piles of meat, piles of fish. It's not what we're accustomed to, so it just kind of feels a little wrong or unsanitary, but it might just be that they do it differently here.
It might be that it is wrong and unsanitary, right? And this is probably an area where you might benefit from having lived here your whole life, I guess. Although, as foreigners, I guess we could have more issues, but then you have to remember that food that we see in that market, the chicken store, ends up in the restaurants that are all around the area. It's not just going to street food vendors, right? It's going to all the restaurants. We get chicken sometimes. We'll get those Cocina Economica meals, mole poblano with a chicken thigh, and we often think, oh, there's that chicken that we saw laying out in the sun. So the key here, I think, is just to make sure that the food you're getting, wherever it is prepared and or cooked correctly, right? And to stick with people you would know, which happens over time, obviously, or know to be high quality, like Los Cucoyos, that place down in Centro that we talk about, because it's famous. And I can assure you, if there was an outbreak from Los Cucoyos, we would have heard about it.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And, improperly prepared or cooked foods are bad for everybody. Locals don't want to get food poisoning any more than we do. Mexicans put limes on all their food, and I think that's a tradition that came in part out of a way to neutralize these problems. You're putting something acidic on your food, which kind of helps, maybe kill any germs on it. You can also watch for how people are preparing things. I buy Jugo Verde in the mornings from this little stand down the street, and I can see that the woman uses bottled water, of course. She's also handling fruit, so she has to be careful. One of the things she does there is she has you put the money when you pay into a bowl of water. It just sits there. She leaves that money sitting there. She has separate money that she has sanitized that she uses to make change. So she's not handling money and handling your food in the same transaction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so, should you trust street food? I mean, we do. We've given it to our kids. That was one of our son Mark's greatest experiences, I think, at Los Cocoyos and also around the corner from there. We have had occasional stomach issues. We've come to Mexico a lot. The problem with this kind of thing is that it's not possible to ever really tie it back to a specific meal or event, even though you might have your suspicions. We've eaten a lot of street food, and I've had some weird stuff in particular. We talked about that in a previous video. And I guess, for anyone watching this, it really comes up to your risk tolerance. Obviously, you don't want to ruin a week or whatever it is in Mexico City by spending 4 days in bed. But there are other things you can do to minimize the risks, right? In addition to the stuff we just mentioned.
Right. Yeah, we take Pepto-Bismol regularly, especially on shorter trips. Just kind of, if I'm thinking ahead, even a day or two before the trip, and generally through the trip, we get a little bit lazier about it as time goes on. But
and longer trips, you can't take it for that long. I mean, for a week it's fine, 2 weeks maybe, but
right. We look for street vendors that are either very busy, because if they're busy, they're just turning the food over quickly. They're not having stuff that's like sitting there for a long time, or highly rated like Los Cocoyos, like we mentioned. We tend not to use the sauces that they put out to add to your food if it looks like they might have been sitting out there for a long time. Some of those they look like they fill it up in the morning and it just sits for the rest of the day. So that's kind of something we tend to avoid. And then there are restaurants that give you a street food experience, but they are a restaurant. Like there's El Tisconcito and Taqueria El Caifán. That's a little local taco chain. So those are places that you can go and have street food type food. You're not on the street. You also can sit down a little bit more comfortably. So that's nice for a little break as well. And then we drink a lot of water, which I think helps just keep your whole digestive system healthy. So we make a point to be, drinking as much water as we can here.
You're better at that than I am, for sure. But yeah, we do. And, also remember, there's a big difference between a little tummy discomfort and full-blown food poisoning. For all the trips we've had, or all the many weeks we've spent and months, whatever, we've both had both experiences here for sure. I mean, the last time I had food poisoning, I want to say it was 1.5 years ago when we stayed at that other Airbnb a long time ago. And I was laid out in bed for 2 days straight. I mean, I literally couldn't stand up and move around. I lost days because of that. But it wasn't from street food. I can tell you that, because I hadn't had any actually on that trip. So we were over in the corner of Roma Norte there, and I don't know what it was, but I have my suspicions.
Yep. Yeah, same for me. I got sick on that same trip. I was a couple days behind you. And I think one of the tough things about this topic is you just never know if, you could get food poisoning from probably 2 hours to 2 days after you've eaten something that was contaminated. So it's very difficult to point back and say, it was this meal, it was that meal, it was a little bit of water I got in my mouth when I took a shower. It's hard. So
don't gargle in the shower.
But we eat out literally every day, multiple times a day here. And I think anytime you travel, you're eating out a lot, you're eating unfamiliar foods. This kind of thing could be a problem anywhere you go, just because you're kind of hitting your digestive system with stuff it's not used to. It's not necessarily just a Mexico problem.
There was also a little food poisoning outbreak during our trip here that occurred in the United States. So I don't remember. You remember if it was lettuce or
frozen onions? I think
frozen onions. Yeah. So I mean, it could be prepared and cooked properly. It might not matter. Right? So it happens everywhere, not just Mexico.
Yep.
So
it comes down to your comfort level. If you're gonna buy a taco on the street and feel weird about it,
I mean, don't buy a taco. But I think there's something for everybody in there, right? You can be adventurous. I'm a little on the outside of that one, but those restaurants Stephanie mentioned, or any taco type restaurants, it's going to be indoor, more of a restaurant experience. I mean, if that's as far as you can go, El Tizconcito. I mean, you have to go to El Tizconcito, right?
Yes, you have to go to El Tizconcito.
We might go there in the next couple of days.
Right?
All right. So there you go. That's a little bit of myth busting, I hope. And we will be back soon with another video as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.